Hi everyone, thanks for watching. You can support our work on our website ageoftruth.tv. And please like our videos, subscribe to our channels on YouTube, BitChute and Brighteon. And remember to hit the bell for notifications. And follow us on Instagram and Facebook. To be sure not to miss any of our shows, you can sign up for our newsletter on our website ageoftruth.tv.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Age of Truth TV. I'm Lucas Alexander in Copenhagen, Denmark. Our guest today is a Swedish investigative researcher, author and lecturer, who has been researching what he calls the largest, most difficult and most expensive murder mystery case in the history of the world, and he calls the investigation a major failure. It is the mystery of the assassination of the Swedish Prime Minister, Olof Palme, who was killed exactly 37 years ago in February 1986. The case has ties to the top elitist international political scene, as well as to secret societies and famous names within politics and entertainment. He now demands justice for the numerous list of people who died because of this case. It's a complex case, which is why we have chosen to do two shows about it. One with researcher Ole Dammegard, and this episode with our guest from Sweden visiting Denmark, who will go in depth with a lot of startling revelations. Claes Hedberg. Claes Hedberg. In Copenhagen, welcome to Denmark and welcome on this show, Age of Truth TV. We are so thrilled that you're here from Sweden. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Lucas. I have been looking forward to this, and I've seen quite a few of your programs, and you are doing a great job.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. You are an investigative researcher, you are an author, and you are a lecturer on the topic of this murder mystery case of Olof Palme, that you also say is the largest and most difficult investigation in the world, and it is a failure, you say.
Yes. And
it is not the truth. What they have been telling us is absolutely untrue. And it is so complex and complicated, and you are an author of a couple of really fat, big books. And on this program, we want to really go deep into it. We made an interview with Ole Dammegard, who's been researching this for a long time, but you've also really done an amazing job here. And before we get into all of your material, I just want to tell the audience that you are, for many years, a former DJ in Sweden and in the United States and internationally, and you were also a founder of a singles community with over 33,000 members. And this were where people, in the days where people met, before there were like Tinder apps and all of that, and people could find loved ones. So that was a fascinating initiative, and that was your past. But now you are a fascinating researcher of this incredible murder mystery, Olof Palme. First of all, why is it not a real murder? Why is, in the way that they told us in the press, why is it so important 37 years later to still talk about it? Claes Hedberg.
Because it's a a very big cover-up. It's it's actually the greatest deceptions against the Swedish people ever made. If you also look at the ship Estonia, who sank 1994, that's also a very, very big thing in Sweden. While the murder of Palme and the Estonia still are not solved at all,
And just for the audience, because they may not know about the ship Estonia that sank in 1994, over 1,000 people were killed, and you also say, and many people say now, that they were all murdered because it was done on purpose, and it is linked to the Palme assassination, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
That's right. So I just happened to come into the Palme murder 12 years after the murder, because I believe that, like everybody else, that it was this crazy guy, Christer Peterson, who killed Olof Palme. And I was driving my car from north of Sweden to the south, where I lived in Malmö, and it was a beautiful spring day in May 1998. On the radio, they were talking about bringing this up in the highest court in Sweden. And soon the message would come that shall it be a new trial or not? And I thought, when I came close to a friend of mine who was running a treatment home for criminals and heavy criminals, before they come back to normal life, they have to come to a treatment home like he was running. And I had met him 6 months earlier in India. And I thought I just pass him by and say hello, because he was a nice guy, and he taught me to meditate. So driving up to his house, he came out, and I said, "Now I hope they will nail him, Christer Peterson." And he said, "It's not that guy who killed Olof Palme. It's one of my patients here in my treatment home who did it." And I got so surprised. So he brought me down to a little house by the lake, and for more than 2 hours he talked about that. We were sitting in the house by the lake, and he talked about this guy, and how he, on the morning when Olof Palme, the same day Olof Palme got killed, he was running away from this treatment home, and he told my friend that I'm going up to Stockholm to take his life. I will shoot him. Who? Olof Palme, of course. Our crazy Prime Minister. He must die. And my friend, he called for help and said that he is loose now. He's on his way to Stockholm. Get him before he gets to Stockholm. But nobody reacted, And today I know that he is a patsy. He is the one running up the stairs. He is not a murderer. And it took about 10 years until I realized that he had, I got the news that he had no left arm. And
he was a psychiatric patient?
Yes.
So he was a little bit mentally out of it.
Yeah, he was, and he didn't like Olof Palme at all, And the next morning he called my friend, so the morning after the assassination, he called my friend and said, now it's done. Now Palme is dead. And
right.
This was on the news, on television, just a couple of hours before at 4 o'clock in the morning. And he said it to my friend, and he got very upset.
So this one-armed man was a patsy. Mm-hmm. He was a psychiatric patient.
Yes.
Do you think he was groomed or programmed in his mind, like mind control, by some of these forces that staged what you are also saying, that they staged this whole assassination of Olof Palme?
What I know is that he had been stolen a car a number of times a few weeks before the assassination, and he was away from 11 p.m. at night until about 5 o'clock in the morning from this treatment place, and he probably drove about 60 kilometers to a town called Norrköping, where a group of stay-behind people had meetings during the nights, talking about the assassination of Olof Palme, and I think they caught him, and they found out that this is the right guy. We have a need for him. So
it was some kind of seduction. They promised him something,
probably,
or do you think that they kind of brainwashed him to do it?
No, they promised him a lot of things, because he never, after the assassination night, he never came back to the treatment home, and he should have stayed there for another 18 months, but he never came back there. And that's one of the questions I made to the Palme police, and they never wanted to talk about this with me. But anyway, he sold his little... He had some furniture and private things in the treatment home. He sold it the night before the assassination to a fellow prisoner for 20 tablets of Valium. And then he never came back as a patient to the treatment home. That's very important to know. And also, he was very athletic. He was running at least between 10 and 20 kilometers every day. And he used to stay on the other side of the lake. He used to stay with a woman who was living there. She used to say, "Come in, have some coffee." And then about 1 month before the murder of Olof Palme, he told her that, "Do you know, Gunvor, do you know that I can kill a very important politician and I can come away with it?" And he did tell her
he could
that,
get away with it.
Yeah, he told her. He told her a few times, and she got afraid. So when the murder had happened, and she saw the phantom picture of that came out all over the world, she recognized him, and then she understood that he murdered Olof Palme. But now I know that he didn't. He was just a patsy.
Like Lee Harvey Oswald
Yes.
in the JFK assassination.
Yes. And that was also Christer Peterson. He never made the murder of Olof Palme.
He was a drug addict,
Yeah,
right?
yes,
And also
yes.
unstable.
But they
used him as well.
They tried to solve the murder very quickly by taking him, and they thought now everything is over, everything is clear. But he was never convicted. He was free. And anyway,
this made international headlines.
Yeah.
This murder. It was also a big thing in America, of course, and Olof Palme had ties to American politics and the international scene. Let's just say the New World Order top elitist also. So he was an important man, but he was also kind of controversial in Sweden, right?
yes, you could say that half the population didn't like him, and the other half were social democratic people who had him as a hero. But also he had done quite a few strange things behind. So the people didn't know that, for example, that he was bribed. He was taking bribes for sending weapons to Iran. And also helping India with nuclear weapons and supporting ANC in South Africa, and he was meeting Castro in Cuba, and he was protesting against the Vietnam War, for example, walking around with the North Vietnamese ambassador in Stockholm that had big headlines. But also
he was seen with the PLO leader Yasser Arafat.
That's right. And he was also, he had a very dark side also, because he was involved in trafficking with young girls and
child trafficking.
Yes.
With young girls.
Yes.
Only girls, not boys.
13, 14 years old girls.
Do you know if he was involved in trafficking children that were younger?
I don't know that, no. But he was a sex maniac, you know. He was very unfaithful to his wife. He had 17 women in Stockholm only that he used to visit. This is
17 women, and that you know.
That has a policeman who handled this thing, who had full control over Palme's sex things. He told me that he had 17 in Stockholm. And
he was also involved, rather famously, at least for a lot of people in this field of truth research, with the American actress Shirley MacLaine.
That's right, yes. And she has written books about that, but she doesn't call him Olof Palme.
No, she calls him by another name. But on YouTube, you can actually see maybe the time that they met. Unless they met before, you can see that in a debate between Olof Palme and Shirley MacLaine from 1977. But that's also interesting. That means he had ties to a lot of important people around the world, and obviously, you say he was a sex maniac.
Yes, he was, and that gave him problems because. And he was bisexual, so...
so it wasn't only women?
No, it was also men. And I could tell you things that I won't do now, but if they are trying to kill me because I work so hard for telling all the Swedish people now, first of all, that this murder didn't happen, and if they try to kill me, this news will come out, which will be very, very, very problemful for the Social Democratic.
But why can't you talk about it? You've written about these things, but you can tell me or tell the audience where is the evidence of some of the things that you can reveal, huh?
Yeah, but this is so annoying for the Social Democratic Party and also for Olof Palme's sons, that I can't tell you this, but I can say that he came to power because he was bisexual.
Oh,
and
really?
Yes.
So he
Yeah. Well, then
he F-word his way to the top. Is that what you're telling me?
Because
really?
The Prime Minister Tage Erlander liked him very much.
Oh, he was also into a little bit of action there.
They had some action, you know, and that meant that all the other young politicians that came, you know, they realized now Olof Palme will be number one. So then after that, all of these men, Anders Färm, Hans Dahlgren, Jan Eliasson also became the high in UN. He was the second after the General Secretary. All of these guys, they became Palmes pojkar. You could say Palmes boys, you know. They had to stand and wait for when Palme said, we must do this, we must do that, and they had to, you know. And
so there was a whole line of people that actually also, that he had sex with?
No, probably not all of these ministers or his...
Oh, they were all ministers.
They were politicians, you know.
Okay. But some he did, and some was still kind of influenced heavily by him.
But that made Palme very vulnerable because his closest friends and some of the ministers close to Palme found out from 1982, 83 and so on that he changed his personality, and he was not only so interested in in politics, and he was very irritable and tired, and so they were, when the Social Democratic Party won the election in 1985, they had some of these friends and ministers had to meet and talk about this, and they met in the ambassador for Sweden, who was the ambassador in Paris. He had a summer home in Corsica, and there, in September 1985, they had a meeting there to talk about the future for Olof Palme, because soon the Swedish people will also realize that something is wrong with Palme. And
Can I just, before you go into telling us what your theory or your knowledge is about what was wrong with him, could it have been like drugs, or maybe that he was highly pressured from, let's say, people in power who was trying to get him to do things that he didn't want to do?
Well, Palme was tired, he was worn out, and he was exhausted and distracted. He was irritable and he seemed wary.
Could he have been on drugs?
I don't know. People who have investigated this and also proved that he had got ill because of a new virus called HIV, and I wouldn't even dare to tell the Swedish people that he probably got HIV because of he was bisexual, you know, and this is actually, in my point of view, in my investigation, is a reason why they have to get rid of him from being the Prime Minister. They have to put him on the side, and how should they do that? They can't just ask him to leave office, because the Swedish people will question why, and they will probably find out that is something wrong with his health, you know. So on this meeting in Corsica, they decided that they have to get rid of Palme, and they need to talk with him so he can be on the bandwagon, sort of realizing that, okay, I have to accept this. So they started thinking about making him a martyr in a murder, a theater murder. So it would be a fake murder. Somebody else will play Palme on the murder scene, and the same night we will bring him out from Sweden to safety. And the safety haven was France, because he had a good relationship with President Mitterrand. And the Swedish ambassador in Paris, Carl Lidbom, he also said when he came back after the murder, he told a lawyer, a Swedish lawyer living in Paris, who helped the embassy. He told him that it's the best thing would be that they never solved this murder. It would be the best thing for Sweden that they never solved this murder. And this man, called Hans Liljesson, he wondered, what is this all about? How can he say something like that? Because he is the ambassador, he knows Olof Palme, he had party friends, and so he started making investigations when he retired. And he wrote a book that came out in 2009.
So a selected group of people that were close to Olof Palme were in on this fake assassination.
Yes.
They were in on this theater murder that was going to take place in February 1986. And Palme himself was in on it.
Yes.
He decided to be, let's say, be taken out and taken away from the scene, and to live his life in France or wherever. We can get into that. And you say this was because he had HIV, and it could not be discovered. Nobody were allowed to know.
Yes.
But supposedly, and this is my question, he lived many years after, right, in secrecy. So he never, he didn't die, didn't become sick. So do you think there could be another option, that maybe he didn't have HIV, and there were other reasons for him to be, let's say, silenced and then taken away from public attention?
That's possible, but also in France they had come very far with the treatment. They had the Pasteur Institute in Paris, and the leader there was Luc Montagnier, who got the Nobel Peace Prize. So if he needed treatment, it would be a good place, because a lot of famous film stars from United States came there for treatments. But
it was later discovered that it was the medicine that people got when they had HIV that actually killed them and gave them AIDS as a disease which they died from. We all know how many people actually died, but it wasn't the so-called virus. In fact, we can even question what is the virus, and we've talked a lot about that on the show. But supposedly he was a top elitist, Olof Palme, and they knew probably if he had it, how exactly he should be treated or not treated in order to live and live a healthy life. That is my suggestion when you look at all of the dots.
One of his best friends, called Ebbe Carlsson, who he had sex with, died in AIDS in 1991. And Ebbe Carlsson together...
So he probably had the treatment.
I don't know. Anyway, some of these people who was selected to make this possible, the whole scenario, this conspiration, were picked out. It was the head of the police, for example. He was the head of police in Stockholm. His name was Hans Holmér, and his friend Ebbe Carlsson, and the Swedish ambassador in Paris, Carl Lidbom, and also a great friend of Palme, Harry Schein. They had different roles here to put the scenario together. And the police chief, he said a few months after a murder, he said that exactly that if the truth of the Palme murder comes out, so it would shake Sweden in its foundations. So what could shake Sweden in the foundations, and not a single crazy guy like Christer Peterson or this man I told you about earlier. It must have been something larger, very.
And it wouldn't only just shake Sweden, it would become an international scandal, because it was international, clearly.
During the scenario is they decided that he should go to the movies, to a cinema, late on a Friday night.
With his wife, Lisbeth.
Yes, with his wife. And the official story is that it was just a spontaneously made visit, but actually it was planned far ahead. And of course he couldn't have any bodyguards with him, because he was going to leave Sweden during the night in an airplane to France.
But did he usually have bodyguards around him? Because in Sweden it is known that even the prime ministers like bicycling around and going around by themselves. That was kind of the free country that Sweden was, right? And Denmark has been a bit like that, but now, of course, things are different, but then it was a little bit more open, wasn't it?
Yeah, but at this time, 1985, Palme had been threatened from many organizations, CIA and South African apartheid people, and so actually he was so hated and also threatened that he should have had bodyguards all the time. And he had in the morning, like he started playing tennis this morning, with some friends of him, and then when they drove him back to his office where the government was sitting, he said that I don't need you anymore. And I have a very good relation with one of the bodyguards who told me that he had the feeling that Palme would need him during the night, and he didn't know anything about the visit to the cinema, and he was sleeping with the telephone beside him. And even the sons of Palme said on a TV show called Skavlan in Sweden, which was quite popular, he told Skavlan asked, "What about the bodyguard?" And the boys said, "Well, our father tried to call the bodyguard, but it was no answer." And this made the bodyguard very, very sad. I met him a few
because that wasn't true.
That wasn't true, and he had to.
He was part of the cover-up.
Yeah.
I mean, he was not part. He was not part of knowing about it, but he became accused wrongly.
That's right, exactly.
And also, when you say he had the telephone behind him, at that time nobody had mobile telephones.
Well, I don't know about the bodyguard. I mean, Palme would have probably called him on his normal telephone, but that was beside him when he was sleeping.
Yes.
And so he got very upset and shocked that he heard that Palme would have died. He said, if I'd been there, nobody would have killed him. Maybe they killed me, he said. But when I called him up a few years ago, I thought he would be very angry with me because my books have been out for a few years, and and he said, "Oh, Claes Hedberg, you're calling me. I read your book, this one, and I think that's probably the reason why Palme didn't want our help this night, because then he could not have escaped."
So after your books came out, and your first book and then your second book, more people who were actually involved at the time and who were very confused about what happened, but who were not in on it, in on the scam,
that's right,
they started to actually say, wow, maybe there's way more to it, and they started to connect the dots because of the extensive work you and other people have done.
Especially when I wrote my first book, came out 2007.
Can you hold that book up, please, for that camera so they can see? What is it called in English?
En oväntad vändning is an unexpected turnaround. Yeah, an unexpected turnaround. And because many people who had something to tell me read the book, I had to write another book called A Fooled People. The people are fooled. And this is Olof Palme's face and the murder scene, actually.
A deceived population, you could also actually translate it more. And this is underneath the subtitle, the theater murder of Olof Palme by you, and then a very extraordinary picture.
I haven't written these books because I want to be famous, or I want to fool around, or Did
you feel this was a calling?
Yes,
Suddenly,
yes.
Why did you go into them? You're not connected in any way to all of this.
No.
You weren't there at the time. You had no connections to these people. You came from a different lifestyle. Why suddenly go into all of this?
I brought my friend who had the treatment home to the Palme group, to the police, after 3 years, because in 2001, because I was upset that the police hadn't contacted him, because he had told them about his patient, and that he left and never came back, and so on. So I was upset, and then I had contact with the Palme group now and then, and they said, "We know about you, but you don't have to call us," and so on. And
so that was quite suspicious, and that made you wary. Something is going on
suddenly
here.
I felt that this is something wrong with this, and then I started investigating. I started reading books. I also read through most of the Ole Dammegard's book. It was in English first, but when I met him in 2016, he came out with the Swedish version. And I was sitting among the audience, and I was so happy that he said that Palme was not murdered this night, because I had the same feeling.
You have many similar, let's say, a similar perspective in many ways, and then there are certain ways where you differ and you're not quite, maybe you don't see it in the same way. And we also did an extensive interview with Ole Dammegard now about this case, and that is interesting for people also to see. But you decided that you wanted to write these books, you wanted to investigate this. Why? I mean, this is not, of course, when people say this is a good career move, it's not.
No.
But I mean, why? Why?
Because somebody has to stand up for all the people who have been killed and threatened, and their lives have been destroyed, you know, because they knew something about something around the murder.
So what you're saying here is that there was this fake murder, you say, you claim that Olof Palme was not murdered.
Yes.
It was staged, and he was brought out of the country and lived for the rest of his life, maybe, in a whatever place. We can get to that.
Yeah.
But because of that fake murder, there were many other deaths.
Yes, real deaths.
And real deaths, and people's lives that were ruined. How many?
Yeah, I would say that at least 100 people have been
100
killed.
people?
Have been killed.
100?
Yes. And it could be a car accident, it could be a drowning accident, it could be a poison thing, it could be in the airplane crash. Then 16 people died at the same time. And then on the Estonia, quite a few policemen working with the Palme case died. They were put there.
Well, they were on that ship.
Yes, they were on that ship. So I would say even more than 100. And then there are a couple of other 100 people who have been, their lives have been destroyed in different ways. And they can't talk about the murder or what they have seen, because then they might be killed also. And this somebody has to stand up, otherwise our world will be crazy. I mean,
it is already crazy.
Yes, but I am only one person, and when I realize there's something wrong with this, and people get killed because they knew various parts of what happened at the murder scene or afterwards or before.
But they've probably done this many times, you know, throughout the ages. We've also on this show we discussed the JFK murder and there's Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy and all of these people that also died in a suspicious way, and maybe with mind-controlled patsies that did it.
Probably it's terrible that so many good people have been killed, but I've been brought up in a country which I loved during the 60s. I was born 1950, so during the 50s, 60s, 70s, also the 80s. And then it started going down, you know. And then when I found out that the politicians are lying and the police are not doing their job and the legal system is terrible, then I don't want to live in a country like that.
Once you wake up to a new understanding of how the world is on all levels, then you know everything is turned upside down, your life crumbles in the way that you knew it, and then you have to look at everything in a different way, in a different light.
That's what I've been doing now for the last 15 years, you know, and I realize...
but a lot of people probably say, he's just a conspiracy theorist.
No, I'm not. This is a conspiracy that the Swedish people have been put on, you know, and
deceived by.
Deceived by, and it cost more than $300 million in investigations, and it's just fake everything. fake investigations, and they
$300 million on a
Yes,
fake
at
investigation.
least. And this is tax money, so the Swedish people have to realize that this is money thrown away because Olof Palme would be an icon, a martyr for because he was murdered in Stockholm, and he wasn't murdered. This is fake.
But do we know for a fact that he wasn't murdered there on the street? It could maybe happen, couldn't it? I mean,
Well, I have 150 proofs here that he hasn't been murdered, and they have not ever shown a picture of a dead Olof Palme.
yeah, but that maybe it would be too macabre or too
No,
too
they should. They must.
hard
They
for people to
must.
see.
They must prove. They must prove that he was murdered. And now it's something just people talk about because the wife was there. She was in on this, and the sons. And people don't need to have the proof because they believe that when the wife was there and the sons were there and the ambulance people and the doctors in the hospital all say that Palme died, that should be enough. But it's not enough. Now they have to show that it is not a fake murder. They have to show us the body. They have to show us the autopsy protocol, so it fits with the wounds. Because if you blame someone to be a murderer, if you blame me for having killed a person, you should also prove that that person has been killed, and he has his wounds and so on. It's never been like that in Sweden. They haven't shown it. It's time they do that. And
But there were people there on the scene when it happened.
Yeah.
And they must have seen that this is Olof Palme who was shot on the street.
No, that's not true. They saw a guy lying there and had a big nose like Olof Palme, but he had his face all covered in blood. Why? Because it didn't fell on the face. He fell on the side, and then Lisbeth Palme, the wife, who is also a substitute, a stand-in, she, who had been shot in the back with a Magnum revolver, she's running around. I'm Lisbeth Palme, and there is my husband Olof. And then, of course, people believe what she say because they've been to the cinema over here just a few minutes before, and now they are here at the murder scene only a few blocks away. And so, of course, people would believe that it happened.
So the real Olof Palme and his wife Lisbeth were at the cinema. And they were there, and that was them.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes, for sure.
So they walked out of the cinema, and at some point they were switched, and a fake couple, two stand-in, two crisis actors, were put in the position. They walked further on the street, on the sidewalk, on that walking street, and then the stand-in, the actor, was assassinated and died. And then that woman, but they must, both of them have been looking exactly like the two, like the real Olof Palme.
They were
and
very
his
similar,
wife.
but also the actor wasn't killed by a real gun. It was a start pistol, a sort of revolver they use when they start track and fields, when they start running, and now they run 100 meters or whatever. It was a gun who didn't have real bullets, and this gun was found 7 blocks away.
That fake gun that didn't have real bullets was found, and in that way you know that such a gun existed.
Yes, we know that. And how the people, how the police treated this the young couple that found the gun, and what happened with it afterwards. It's a special session here about that, who should open the eyes of many people.
But those people must have seen the young couple you are talking about and other people that was on the murder scene. They must have seen that this is actually not really Olof Palme and his wife Lisbeth, because you say that even though the actor you claim had blood in his face, that was still the wife, Lisbeth.
It was also an actress. She was an actress.
Do we know who those actors were?
Yes, we have found out that she is called Birgitta Palme, and she was a real actress.
So her name was also Palme?
Yes, she was married to Erik Palme, who was a relative to Olof Palme. And to make this the whole story, the whole scenery, to make it fit, they needed to have people they could trust, you know. It shouldn't be so many people involved. So it's probably just a few outside the family who has all the details. Otherwise, they might have small details about it. But let's say now we go back to when they leave the.
And who was the actor? You should also mention that.
The actor,
played Olof
yes,
Palme,
the actor is called. He was quite famous. He was born the same year as Olof Palme, and I have pictures. Maybe you can show them on the show. How similar they look like. Big noses, both of them, and they used to play tennis also a couple of times, couple of days every week, and sit in the sauna together and talk and so on. And he was a real friend of Olof Palme, and the same age and same size and so on. So it's probably him, because...
But you say that he was a famous actor,
yeah.
Wouldn't that? But then people on the street would recognize him. Oh, he's a famous actor.
No, he... the blood was covering his face, and he had the same nose as Olof Palme, and he was only playing Olof Palme here for about 20 minutes that night, you know. So
what was his name?
His name is Jan-Olof Strandberg, and he was born 1927 as Olof Palme.
And did he continue his career after
yes,
this?
he did, and he also during the ceremony in the the government and you know the whole he was reading poetry
in the parliament.
Yes,
in front of the government and all the other
yes.
politicians.
And another peculiar thing is that he belonged to the most famous theater in Stockholm, Dramaten, and they had a play this night, the 28th of February 1986. They had a play in Madrid, in Spain, with it was called Fröken Julie. So
Miss Julie in English, yes.
Swedish actors there in Madrid. And
by Ingmar Bergman. Huh?
That's right. Mm-hmm. And 2 years ago, I got a letter from a lady.
Strindberg. It was Strindberg, but it was Ingmar Bergman. He was directing it.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. Anyway, I got a letter from a woman a couple of years ago that she wrote that I lived in Madrid. I went to see this play, this guest play from Dramaten in a famous theater in Madrid. And after the show, went to the wardrobe to get my jacket, and then there was a rumor that Olof Palme had been shot in Stockholm, and this was a quarter before midnight. It was 25 minutes after the murder. And
well, they have time enough to hear it, maybe.
No, the news came on 20 minutes after midnight.
The news didn't come out publicly before 20 minutes after midnight.
Yes.
And they heard it a quarter to midnight.
Yes, that's right.
And that was just 20 minutes after it actually happened. And so they knew more already and were in on it.
Yes, they knew more than the Swedish people.
Than the Swedish people.
And anyway, I had to check this, so I phoned up a lady who was an actor in the play, famous actor, Marie Göransson. And I asked her about that, and she said, yes, that's true. And we were invited to the Swedish ambassador in Madrid for some food after midnight.
Late night dinner,
Yeah.
nightcap.
When we came there, 10 minutes before midnight, the ambassador said, no, my dear friends, we cannot have any celebration here now because Olof Palme probably has been killed in Stockholm by a lonesome murderer.
So they also knew
they
they're at the
canceled,
embassy
yeah.
before that.
10 minutes before midnight. And it took more than 1 hour and 20 minutes before it came on the news in Sweden. But the international news agency called TT, Tidningarnas Telegrambyrå, they did send it out 20 minutes after midnight. And you remember the famous American voice, Walter Cronkite?
Who was reading the 6 o'clock news on CBS, was it?
Yeah, that's right. He said the Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme was assassinated in Stockholm last night, and so on. And so then it came out about 1 hour after the murder. But in Madrid, they knew it half an hour after the murder.
But that also leads you to believe, and this was way before the internet, but that leads you to believe that a lot of things were connected, and we also know that those of us who've been researching alternative news, that Walter Cronkite was also part of the top elite in a way and was advocating the New World Order.
Okay. But anyway, it was out all over the world. Swedish people didn't know anything. And the police, most policemen in Stockholm didn't know anything. And there are so many very crazy things that really happened, you know. So I explained in my books, the Swedish people can see, that's why, and so on. So I would say that Jan-Olof Strandberg, probably after being put into the fake ambulance, taken away, he was so exhausted that now I must tell my friends in Madrid what happened. And of course, he couldn't say that he was playing Palme and that Olof Palme was not assassinated, because it would be on the news soon. And now he was the first one to tell his friends in Dramaten.
But isn't that suspicious if he would actually tell somebody if he had played the part? Which that alone is outrageous to think about.
Nobody would understand and believe that he played the part.
But didn't anybody confront him with that question? Did you actually play that role?
No. It never came out. It's just in my investigations, it all looked like it must have been Jan-Olof Strandberg who played.
So you never got to confront him about it?
No, I asked Marie Göransson if she could help me to see him, and she said, well, he's quite old now, and this was in April. It must have been April 2020 or maybe 2019. And she said, I will be ready to talk with him. And he died 3 weeks after my telephone call to Marie Göransson. He died 3 weeks after that.
3 weeks after he died, that actor?
Yes. He died.
Do you think there's any connection there? Are we speculating too much?
Could be, because some people, at least 3 or 4, have died after I had telephone calls to either a friend or a relative or themselves. They have died very close to that.
Really?
I
but
know.
Not just because they were old and sick and whatever.
No. Because maybe I come too close, you know. And there was a man who was a very good friend to Jan-Olof Strandberg's son, who was running a little theater down south in Sweden. And this man who called me, he and his wife were good friends to Jan-Olof Strandberg's son Michael and his wife. And he called me up 2019, and he said that Claes, you have said that some people here connected, the relatives and so on, they suddenly just die. And I can tell you that Jan-Olof Strandberg's son died in the year 2000 in cancer. And 1 year before he was strange and, you know, fit and so on. So that was a very, very quick scenario and then suddenly just died. And he wanted to tell me this. And now I've been trying to
2000, in the year 2000?
Yes, yeah.
But did you already investigate it back then, before the year 2000?
No, I didn't know.
No.
And many, many people died the year 2000. I have a list of at least 12 people who maybe they get rid of because, you know, in the year 2000, many people died then. Maybe they decided that now we have to get rid of him and her, and so there are many. And this is just another one. And what makes me very, very suspicious now is that I can't get in touch with this man who told me this. We used to speak every second week, and now for the last 5 months I haven't heard a word from him, and I can't reach him. So I'm afraid that maybe something had happened to him also. But coming back now to the murder scene where we have two fake, Lisbeth Palme and Olof Palme. And if we look at the times, because they are lying there around from 18 minutes after 11 o'clock p.m. at night, 18 minutes after that, then the shooting was. And they have been lying there for 14 minutes before the ambulance is coming.
14 minutes?
Yes. And
but a crowd must have gathered around that to see.
Yes, it was some people, but not many actually, not many people. There was a young man running out from a taxi who made the mouth-to-mouth help, and a young girl, 17 years old, who ran from one car to make the
CPR.
Yes, and Lisbeth Palme then tried to pull her away, and both of them could feel the pulse, you know, of the victim. And it wasn't much blood there. And when I interviewed the young man who making the mouth-to-mouth help, I asked...
On what you say is that actor?
Yes. No, it was... Yes, on the actor, yes. I asked him, did you get blood in your mouth? And he said, no. It's something very strange about this. I don't know. Did you get maybe an ampoule or something? And he showed me that. Yeah, it was probably that. And he said,
theater blood. How to make theater blood? Put it in the mouth.
I don't want to get involved. He said. I was only there to help because I thought I could help. And me and my friends left in a taxi and went away. And the young girl who tried to help, she has been treated very, very badly during the night and by the police, and even when she was working in a hospital, there was one military man called her up and said, I need to meet you. And on the meeting he said, never talk to anyone what you have seen on the murder scene. Don't ever talk to anyone about that. So there are people...
And yet she still kind of did, or revealed it to you or to somebody else that...
No, she wrote a book.
She wrote a book, that 17-year-old who's of course not 17 anymore.
Yes, but she wrote a book about it and told how bad she felt. But she also has got... some new jobs and probably has been paid to be quiet. So that's another story. But there was not actually not so many witnesses who came close, and that's also fashion. I'm fascinated about that. But when this ambulance come to the murder scene, it is 11:32. And exactly 11:32, another ambulance comes to the hospital with a dead Olof Palme and a lady, also a substitute, playing Lisbeth Palme. So how can it be one Olof and Lisbeth Palme at the hospital at the same time there's one Olof and Lisbeth Palme in the murder scene?
Still on the street, and then there's another car.
Yes,
so there were two.
Yes.
There were two actors more involved.
Yes.
So there were several
Yes, there were altogether 3 Lisbeth Palme, 1 real one, and 3 Olof Palme, 1 real one, 1 dead body, and 1 actor on the murder scene. And this is because...
So there was 1 dead body?
Yes, who came to the hospital, dressed in Olof Palme's clothes. And you know, you can...
So they killed somebody to...
No, they probably didn't kill somebody, but people all die all the time, and maybe this was a person who didn't have many relatives. Maybe he was just lying, he died in the street because of an overdose or anything like that.
But then they could have seen this, not the man, not even close to it.
But the nurses who came close to this man, body, said it wasn't Olof Palme. But then they have been silenced. But at the hospital, they actually used 2 bodies. 1 body came in that was fatter and shorter and didn't look like Olof Palme, but dressed in Olof Palme's clothes. And that body also comes to the autopsy next day, where the what do you call them?
The coroner.
Yeah, the coroner, the autopsy man who makes the autopsy said that this is not Olof Palme's body. But at the same time in the hospital, there is 1 nurse who was working for intensive care department, who was called down to a special room, which they call the catastrophe room. And she came there, and somebody was standing outside and said, "It's Olof Palme is lying in there." And she thought, crazy, because they joke with each other in the hospital. But she walked in, and there is a body which is larger than Olof Palme, with no wounds, no blood, not the same head, not the same nose. And with the organ was like that. It couldn't have happened after half an hour, because this was half an hour after the assassination.
His stomach or what?
No, his his testicles. It was big like a football. So she looked at the sheet there and said Sven Olof Palme and his address, and there were 2 doctors standing on either side like that, saying nothing. And on the what do you call it, there was just a line. It was not like, you know, the person was dead. Yeah, it was dead and naked and pale and so on. And she wondered, what am I doing here? I can't do anything. But probably she was brought there, or they asked her to come there, to then go back to her department and tell other nurses and doctors that Olof Palme is dead. He's lying there. But it wasn't Olof Palme's body.
Just to give them or the whole thing an alibi.
Yes. I asked her, are there dead bodies in the hospital? Yes, down in the basement there are a room which... So they probably just borrowed a body for maybe half an hour or something like that, to show some people that this is Olof Palme. But of course,
with football-sized balls.
Yeah, yes, that's right. She said to me, she must have seen an interview with me on one of the programs when I say that Palme was not murdered. Then she realized, so I had the right feeling already
So
during the night. She called this TV station, Sweb TV. She called the owner and said what she had come up to, and said that the man you are interviewing is right. Olof Palme's body was not in the hospital.
After seeing you on that program?
Yes, yes. But
so, basically, this lady at the hospital, she called the television station. She said that she had seen you on it. And what I wanted to know was that, did your participation and your interest in your research, did your books and the research you've done kind of open the case again in a way to make people more interested or question the official narrative?
Yes, when I interviewed her, it even made my last book more interesting, because now we have evidence that there have been two bodies at the hospital, both to be Olof Palme. And so this is very important. And now I try to contact her, talk with her, invite her for one of my lectures, and it seems like she has been threatened.
Okay, compromised.
To be quiet.
To be quiet, okay.
Otherwise,
and this is understandable.
Yeah.
If there is something to it, if all of the things you're saying is true, or some of it is true, let's just say, then of course people don't want to, they fear for their lives, especially if you say that 100 people and more lost their lives because of this, if that is actually the case.
And the proof of the two ambulances being in one position and another position, with one Olof and Lisbeth Palme here, one Olof and Lisbeth Palme here, at the same time.
But the time doesn't add up. How does two? Why don't they just take you said the fake actors from the street? How can they still be on the street? And then another fake actors are in this ambulance. Then it's the same time.
Well, it's a little hard to explain, but I can try to do it as quickly as possible. You have two ambulances. This one coming to the hospital is called 912. 912, and the other one is 951. 951 is 4 minutes before coming to the murder scene, is on another street in Stockholm, but is ordered to contact the Larmcentral and LAC at exactly 23:28. Because this is what the police, Hans Holmér, the key conspirator who was the head of the investigation officially, he has written in his book that the ambulance left at 11:28. So this ambulance 951, being away from the murder scene, he sees that now time is 11:28. I must call LAC. And he's saying, coming in 2 minutes, a man shot in the breast, coming in 2 minutes. And they ask him, who is the person? It's a well-known person. It's a famous person. And this is 11:28. 11:28, the other ambulance, 912, is on its way into the hospital, because it should look like he has left he is leaving the murder scene and coming in 4 minutes later, 11:32, to the hospital with this wounded person, who is actually a dead person. And the other ambulance is coming down to the murder scene and is just going to pass by when a witness is waving him into the pavement. And that was not in the plan. So suddenly he is at the murder scene, and he believed that this 912 had already picked up. You understand? So this one is coming in 11:32. He is waved in 11:32. Here is a dead Olof Palme and Lisbeth Palme. And here is one man lying on the pavement who looked like Olof Palme and supposed to be Olof Palme, and Lisbeth Palme. And the superintendent called Gösta Söderström. He was the first policeman on the scene, exactly 11:30. And he said that 2 minutes later an ambulance came. And another superintendent called Åke Rimborn came to the hospital and saw this ambulance coming in 11:32.
So there were witnesses seeing all of this.
Yes.
Why do you think it had to happen at the same time?
It's a mistake by the...
It was a mistake.
Yeah.
Okay, so the real Olof Palme was at the cinema. He was there at the scene with the fake actors, while there were also fake actors in the other ambulance, you say. Where was the real Olof Palme? How did that happen?
We have this famous block or a building called Skandiahuset. And we have Sveavägen in front. And I actually made a model of this to show on my, when I do the PowerPoints. I made and showing each minute what happened. So when Olof and Lisbeth Palme comes from the cinema here, crossing the street, they are going up to a boutique called Sari. And then at the other end of the block, there is one civilian policeman standing with a walkie-talkie, and he's being recognized by 2 young girls, which it was not supposed to happen, you know. And these are 2 witnesses who has been very silent, you know. They see this policeman, and he gets in the walkie-talkie, "Get ready, they're coming now. What shall I do? Somebody has recognized me. Carry on after the plan, you know." So then one of the girls sees a couple walking north, and Olof Palme and Lisbeth are supposed to come going south, you know. And they are standing outside the boutique, and they get a sign from a policeman inside the boutique, who gives the sign, "Go now." Because with his walkie-talkie, he said, when the other couple comes, you know. And exactly in the middle of the whole block, there is a pillar of with advertising, a 3-dimension pillar like that.
Triangle.
Yeah, triangle. Outside the main entrance to the Skandia house. So this Olof and Lisbeth comes here, the other couple comes here, and exactly they have trained to walk exactly, and they stop and they turn around and walk back, and being
Were they not taken into the Skandia house?
No, the real Olof and Lisbeth Palme are walking into the Skandia house.
They walk into the Skandia house, and the other one walk out.
Nobody has been inside yet, because they changed behind the pillar, you know. So even walkie-talkie policemen on the other side of the street, it goes so nicely, so they can't see that they have been changed. They are dressed exactly the same, and this couple is going back, Olof and Lisbeth, into the Skandia house, through the Skandia house, out on the street, where is a car waiting to take Olof Palme to the airport.
And what are we showing here?
There's a car with
You can see it up here, maybe. A car waiting. That's the Skandia. Is that That's the cinema.
Yeah, it was shown outside the cinema. It was seen outside the cinema first, but then this car is picking up Olof and Lisbeth Palme outside
the back entrance of the Skandia house. Yes. And then they drive through where to where?
They drive with Olof and the Swedish ambassador from Paris
Because his wife Lisbeth is left behind in Sweden, of course,
Yes.
to come out publicly.
And she comes to in a police car 10 minutes after 9:12, coming in at 11:32. So 11:42 she comes in a police car to the hospital. Because now
So she's taken from the Scandia house back entrance she goes into a police car, and Palme goes into another waiting car, and they bring him where?
they bring him to Dala Airport, 200 kilometers north of
The airport here, depicted here in a cartoon.
And there is a French jet waiting, which the Swedish ambassador came with at noon during the day.
The French what?
The Swedish ambassador in Paris,
the Swedish
Carl Lidbom, he came at noon
with that private jet.
Yes, and it's been standing here for 14 hours waiting for taking off with Olof Palme and the ambassador, and they fly to France.
They fly to France because he gets immunity there?
No, he was
protection.
He was helped by President Mitterrand and the family Rothschild, Emma Rothschild, who was one of Olof Palme's mistresses.
Oh, the Rothschilds.
Yes, the Rothschild. They had the castles there, and
so he was put in a Rothschild castle.
Probably.
Yeah. So this is actually what you say, almost an Illuminati, New World Order conspiracy.
Emma Rothschild was the last person Olof Palme talked with before he went to the movie. And Emma Rothschild had a flat about 100 meters from Olof Palme's flat in the old town in Stockholm. And today, the youngest son of Olof Palme lives in Emma Rothschild's flat.
And how she was connected? She was, of course, a Rothschild, but she was living in Sweden, so she was there was a Swedish branch of the Rothschilds, or was she originally from either the French branch or the British branch?
The American branch. And she was a mistress also to Olof Palme, and she got some very good jobs by Olof Palme with. And
she had connections, or he himself had connections to the Rothschild family in France, so he could stay in their castles.
She fixed it. She probably called him to say that now when the airplane is landing, we will take care of you. Don't worry about anything, or something like that. I don't know, of course, but the last 3 telephone calls Olof Palme had before he went to the cinema this last evening. It was to his son Morten, who was also going to the cinema. It was with a man called Sven Aspling, who was one of the heads for Stay Behind, who also had their headquarters in the Scandia house. And probably Ole Dammegard has told you about that, the Stay Behind thing. And then it was Emma Rothschild, so Rothschild or Rothschild, however you pronounce it. So anyway,
and you kind of feel, or you have the evidence, you feel, or enough dots that you've connected that Palme was placed in a Rothschild mansion in France, at least in the beginning.
I can't prove that, but I can imagine. When he landed in France about 5 o'clock in the morning, probably
But I mean, so if he did stay at a Rothschild mansion in France, he would probably only stay there for a while. Where has he been hiding? Where has he been living? What has his life been like? If this is true at all,
this is very exciting, but I can't tell you. My investigation goes as far as he is leaving Sweden in a plane at 2 o'clock at night, and the alarm all over Sweden came 5 minutes later to all the military, all the police, and so on.
After
5 minutes after the plane had left, and also Lisbeth Palme And the ministers who came to the hospital, they left after the alarm came on, because then they knew that Palme is safe now. He's not on Swedish soil anymore.
So then he was no longer united with his wife. I mean, he was not with. You obviously say he had a lot of mistresses and also men that he was with.
His wife wanted to have a divorce, but the foreign minister Sten Andersson told her to take that back from the court because they were going to solve it in another way, and they probably solved it by bringing him away from Sweden. And you know, the wife Lisbeth and the two eldest sons had a special meeting in not far away from this airport in Borlänge called Dala Airport, because they had bought a little house just out in the wilderness where they had a meeting a couple of weeks before the murder. What they did there, I don't know, but they had a meeting there, and exactly 4 weeks after the murder, Lisbeth and her 3 sons and their girlfriends and wives and so on, they had a big party here because they couldn't celebrate in Stockholm. They had to look very sad, but of course they knew that the father or her husband hasn't been killed.
But I mean, what about the sons then and his children? I mean, if you say they knew about this also and they were in on it, how did they get to see their father?
Yes, this is what I've been trying to tell journalists in Sweden, that you have to find out where the sons have gone to see the father, because then we will understand that okay, he lived there or her lived there, but I understand that both Lisbeth and the sons have met him quite a few times afterwards. I can't prove it, but
where?
It might have been France, it might have been Greece, it might have been Russia. That's 3 options. But when I talked to the bodyguard and I asked him, what about after the murder? Were you bodyguard for the family? Yes, I was for Lisbeth Palme and her sons, and I also flew to America for 3 months with Lisbeth Palme, and I was her bodyguard in America for 3 months. So what did she do there? I don't know.
He didn't tell you what she did there?
He wouldn't tell me, probably.
So maybe he was with her when...
Yeah, he was with her for 3 months.
If Palme was in America. I mean, what we do know after the Second World War, a lot of Nazi scientists were brought over to the CIA via Operation Paperclip. And worked there for many years, and many people also say and speculate that Hitler was actually taken and not killed in the bunker and lived in South America in a resort in a territory. That's also a big story there that some experts can talk about. But I mean, it seems like the same kind of scenario we're talking about here. It's the same kind of thing.
It could be, but I mean, listening to Ole Dammegard, we have the same idea that Palme was not killed, and that's the most
a fake setup. Yeah, that's what you two agree on.
That's the most important thing, because we want the evidence that he has been murdered, and if he hasn't been murdered, if there are no evidence, all the other people who are investigating and writing books and so on must join our theory, so we can be on the same side and to find out the truth. If we are many, it's easier. Now somebody believes it was CIA, another one KGB, and another one the South Africa people, and so on, you know. But Ole and Hans Liljeson, who was the advisor to the Swedish embassy in Paris, who wrote the book also, we are certain that he wasn't killed. And if Ole is right, that maybe the bigger stories
about CIA or George Bush Sr.'s involvement, because Palme was not acting in the last many months. He says something like that he was going against what could in a very few words be called maybe against the New World Order narrative, that they wanted to actually kill him for real.
Maybe they killed him for real when he came to France. I don't know. But anyway, if Ole is right that the deep state is behind this, I applaud that. But I have come to another conclusion that it isn't that complicated.
But the deep state they're still part of the deep state if they did it locally, let's just say with those people involved in Sweden. Because he had all of those ties to everything in the world that you've also said.
But I believe that his friends, and also even this police chief was one of his friends, and some of the ministers, they were friends of Palme. First of all, they didn't want him killed, They want to help him. And at the same time, the party could benefit from him being a martyr because he was world famous. And for the young people in Sweden who loved the Social Democratic Party, he would be an icon, a hero. And the party could stay in government because they would get the empathy from the Swedish people.
And it would make a huge psychological impact on so many countries, also in Denmark, Scandinavia, and around the world. So what you're saying is that there are many benefits to this, whether or not there is one theory on it's only one reason or two reasons. There are many reasons, actually, you're saying.
And we know that in Stockholm at the time there were many organizations and people who really wanted to kill Olof Palme, but it was going to happen 2 or 3 weeks later, before he went to Moscow to meet Gorbachev. But now they did it in front of their noses, because the 28th of February, it was the weekend. We connect with the famous ski race Vasaloppet, and this policeman, the conspirator policeman Hans Holmér, he used to do the ski race, and they said that he was in Borlänge, close to Dala Airport, to first of all load Olof Palme's luggage on the plane, but also that he slept there with his fiancée during the night, and he got the message that Palme was killed in the morning. But we have proof that he was in Stockholm all the time. From evening, he came from Borlänge with a plane with his driver, who is a very very good man, I must say, that Rolf Dahlgren told a man in the government, or in the, his name was Jerry Martinger. He was a lawyer and he was in the Justitia department, and he was told by Hans Holmér's driver that they were driving around in Stockholm from 10:30 p.m. until 1 o'clock a.m. So he could check that everything is in order, They even rolled, passing by the murder scene 7 minutes after the murder, where Hans Holmér could see, okay, it's been working. And he is telling his guys at the police headquarters when they should go out with different alarms, Because most of the policemen in city, they didn't know anything about this.
No, but only a few people had to know in order to keep it a secret. But do you think there could have been like a bigger motive to take him out, even if he was rescued? a bigger political motive? Was he not acting in the way that the world stage, let's say, wanted him, the top elitists behind this?
I have the same idea as Ole Dammegard, that when he realized that I'm finished, he changed his way of being, you know. For example, he wanted the Scandinavian countries to be a nuclear-free zone, and he had talks with the Norwegian Prime Minister and the Danish Prime Minister, and both of them belonged to NATO, and they were very sort of upset that Palme wanted them to go together with him to Gorbachev and say that we in Scandinavia, we want a nuclear-free zone here. You know, otherwise Russia or Soviet Union would believe that the island of Gotland could be like a floating aircraft carrier, you know, sending, like Cuba was for America when the Cuba crisis was. So Kennedy and Khrushchev, you know, because of course Soviet Union doesn't want nuclear weapons to be as close, and America didn't want Cuba to have nuclear weapons from Soviet Union because it's too close.
So that's one idea.
Yeah. So and I think Dammegard is. He's also saying that Palme changed to be more like a peace-loving man, and because he realized now my time is over, and so he changed, and that might have been very disturbing.
So I mean, it could be that, or even more. Maybe there's something we don't know yet.
Of course, there are many more details, but we can't go in. If we talk about them, it will be another hour.
Yeah, but it's more about, you know, what could be the motive of taking him out, whether he actually died and was killed like the official stories say, or like you say, and what a lot of people now are saying, and there's a lot of evidence apparently that it was a fake assassination. But it is interesting to know exactly why did this have to happen, and clearly your idea is that there were many reasons.
I wonder why they were shooting the stand-in, Olof Palme's double, if they were shooting when, you know, I can't understand that, because if that had happened, it would have been a lot of chaos in there, and I think the witnesses close have been very, very much afraid. Maybe they would run away when they hear this.
Maybe they did. That's why there weren't that many people. Yeah. But this is I think Ole Dammegard is talking a lot about that, and people can listen to that in our show with him, because there could be even more to it. But
of course, but
your main mission here is to shine the light on into these dark areas and dark corners that people don't remember and they don't understand. They haven't gone into it. And then what would you like to see happening and happen from now on? What is your main goal?
My main goal is that all of these victims and all of these people who have been killed because they knew something about, they must have be helped and be treated like good people, because they are the real heroes. You know, they got killed because of this, and they probably will kill me also, and that's okay, because.
Do you think so?
I mean, I want to live more. I want to live longer, but I say like Mahatma Gandhi or Nelson Mandela, that they can't kill me. They can kill my body. They can't kill me anyway. So But I'm doing my best, and I'm ready to.
But why do you think that they would actually want to kill you? I mean, you weren't there, so you can't really speak about that.
Revenge.
But do you think you're that important?
They,
I mean,
no, I don't think I'm
no
important.
offense, but
I think they because they have been trying now to do it 3 or 4 times.
they have been trying to do it to you?
Yes.
Take you out?
Yes.
For what? For saying this, but other people say it also. I mean, this is just, a lot of people come out with these putting dots together. I mean, why is that so?
It's also like Dammegard says, if you form many friendships and if you get well known, because quite a few people have seen me talking about this and being interviewed. So I have a lot of friends, you know, and if something happens to me, they would realize why it happened. And that was Ole also says in some interviews, and he also.
But you feel you had experiences that somebody wanted
they
to do
put they put gas in my car 5 times. They have broken into my home and put poison in bottles of water and
really
change food in the refrigerator. So I have to put lines and sticks and being very careful.
But do you know that this is
Yes,
for real?
yes,
This is
yes.
not. I mean,
I've even went
paranoia.
No, it's not paranoia because it happens so many times, and every time I live alone. They want me to live alone so they can come after me. Now I have a woman who understands me and who also protects me, and because we are 2 people, it's not so easy for them. Because they want to do it in a way so it doesn't, the light is not on a murder. It could be that I'm being poisoned, so I get a heart attack, or I crash with my car, or you know.
We certainly hope not. Obviously,
No,
you're just.
I'm not afraid of that. But I'm ready to do my best to help the families and all the people affected by all deaths, you know, surrounding the Palme case.
Your books are in Swedish, so you have not published them in English yet, have you?
I have to rewrite a little because some of the people, for example, this man here, who is quite famous in Sweden, his name is Leif G.W. Persson, and he is one of the brains behind the operation. And he has been like the oracle in Delphi. He has been saying this and this and this, and he's so popular, people believe him every time, but he can change his story from week to week to week. I have here two open letters to him, to the sons of Olof Palme, to the Prime Minister after Olof Palme, Ingvar Carlsson, and I tried to talk to their common sense, but also to their conscious, that stop lying. You have been lying for 37 years. And to the sons, I'm saying that if you keep on lying, you have to keep on lying for another 35 years, because this is a secret for 70 years.
If they are lying. If they are lying.
But they are. They are lying.
I mean, I think it's obviously a big case, and people should look into it. And people who are listening to this should research it, and everybody at least in Scandinavia, can read your books, and maybe you can translate them at some point also to English, because that could be interesting for people to read as well. Is there anything here in our remaining moments that you would like to say to people, or to say about this case?
Yes, I'm trying now to get all the people together who have been making private investigations, writing books about the Palme case, so we can get together and make a commission and talk to the Parliament that we should have the right to go down to earth, turn every stone to find the truth about the Palme murder, and let the witnesses who are now silenced and threatened, if they talk, they will probably get assassinated or killed. So I will do my best so we can be a force to work to get the truth about this. And maybe a lot of people say that no, that's impossible. They won't. But I'm ready to do what I can. I'm ready to risk my life so we can get to bottom with the Palme case, because it's crazy. The Swedish people have been fooled, and it's time to wake up, and not only wake up because of the Palme case, also about the corona and they have to wake up. This is sleeping people. Very easy to fool the Swedish people.
This is not Sweden. We're not in Sweden. This is a program that goes around the world.
Yeah.
So this is a global thing. If you even believe that there's even talk about flat Earth or round Earth. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to dig into when we go into this field of conspiracies and truth research, and it's the whole world that they have lied to, right, about so many things.
Of course, but Sweden are a sleeping beauty country. I heard that, and there is books written about that when Swedish people moved to America, they became famous because it was so easy to fool them, the Swedish immigrants to America. There are books written about that. And we are, we really believe what the authorities says. We have 400...
But they do also here in Denmark.
More than 400 authorities in Sweden. And most of them are run by the Social Democrat. And even the state-owned radio and television is the Social Democrats who have people everywhere, And what I'm doing now is I'm a what do you call it, persona non grata. And it's okay. I believe what I do. I can prove that he didn't die. Now it's time for the Social Democratic Party to prove that Palme died. So come with the evidence. And if they can't, let's all of us who investigate here, let's come together and do a common thing.
At least it's a very interesting debate, and it's certainly eye-opening. It's almost like a movie script, and there's a lot more to research. And if people want to get your books, how can they do that?
Well, the books written in Sweden, they can go on the internet. They have bokus.com. It's the biggest thing on the internet where you can buy books on internet. But also www.swebtv.se. They have their own station, their own programs, and there is a boutique, so they can buy it from
a shop there.
Sweb TV, yeah.
Okay, and you don't have a website?
I don't have a website. No, I'm very bad at that, and I've never done my own program about this. And of course, they can call me. You can get my telephone number, so they can call me.
All right.
I'm not afraid. So, and I'd be ready to come and talk to lectures and whatever. And I will also like to send my regards to Ole Dammegard. He's doing a fantastic job. And I would like to thank you, Lucas, for having me here. You are a great personality, and I like your programs, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, and I really appreciate that very much, and I want to thank you so much, Claes Hedberg, for coming to Denmark and being on Age of Truth TV, and thank you for presenting your case and this startling information. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Good man. Good man.
Likewise. We would like to thank Claes Hedberg for being on Age of Truth TV. And thanks to all of you for watching our show. You can support us by clicking on to our website, ageoftruth.tv. And please like our videos, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell for notifications. You can sign up for our newsletter on our website, ageoftruth.tv as well. Please also subscribe to our alternative channels on BitChute and Brighteon. Your support is greatly appreciated and very needed. On behalf of the Age of Truth TV team, we thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon.